I created this spooktacular sign from a scrap piece of wood from the dump. It had a few challenges. I'm going to take you through the process. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to be able to pull it off, but I did in the end, and it was so much fun. You don't need a Cricut. You don't need stencils. This is a really easy process. So let's get busy and making some Halloween decor. I never throw out any scrap bits and pieces of wood because they can all be turned into signs. This is just a scrap piece of plywood that I found in the burn pile. Brought it home. I'm going to turn it into a fabulous Halloween sign. I painted the base of the piece of wood with some black homemade chalk paint, and then I got out my acrylic paint and I added some green. I let it dry, and then I added some orange. And I'm not making sure that I'm getting that whole board covered. I want to create an old, scary looking piece of wood that looks like it's been around forever. Now, this is salt. This is actually pickling salt, but you can use any type of salt. And I'm sprinkling it into that orange paint. And then when it was completely dry, I went over it with my white homemade chalk paint. We're creating a really chippy texture on this piece of wood with these techniques. There's never really any right or wrong way to do these techniques. We're just looking for a scrap piece of wood that looks like it's been weathered and outside forever. Now I've gotten out my scraper after everything was dry, and I'm scraping away that salt, and any of that paint color that was underneath the salt is going to be revealed. And then I went in with my 80 grit sandpaper and I went all around the edges to distress it even more. We're slowly getting there, but I'm not quite happy yet. I had just some, actually this is old paint water, and I'm spreading it over that whole sign and right to the edge of the wood. And then I've got my instant coffee, and I'm going to sprinkle that into that paint water, and it's going to start to melt, and it's going to start to give a really spooky feel to this piece of wood. We're all finished. This is going to be a really great base to make our Halloween sign on. Instant coffee is one of my favorite things to have in my craft room. There's so many different ways that you can use it. You can antique paper with it. You can use it as a stain, or here you can see I'm using it to age my wood even more. Once it was completely dry and that instant coffee had melted into that water, I went back with that scraper again and scraped it all down. Now let's get ready to put these graphics on our sign. I printed these off on my laser printer. These are graphics that I've designed. They're available in my Etsy store. I'll put the link down below in the description. And I made sure that I reversed those images, because when you're doing this technique, if you don't, all your letters are going to be backwards. I used my Mod Podge mat. I let it sit for 24 hours, and after it had dried, I've got a little dish of water, and I'm just dampening that paper so you can just start to see the graphics show through, and then rubbing off that paper. If you've been following along, you've seen me do this technique hundreds of times, and I absolutely love it. You can go back in my playlists and check those out if you're new here and you haven't seen any in-depth tutorials on it. So here's where we ran into some problems because I wasn't thinking ahead. I put that instant coffee on that piece of wood. Well, as soon as I put the water on those graphics to rub it off, of course, it reactivated that instant coffee and it rubbed off wherever there wasn't any of those Mod Podge graphics. But I put my thinking cap on and I thought I can make this work. I'm going to be very determined and I'm not going to start again. So I took the edge of my scissors and I just started scraping away around the edges to blend it in a little bit, and it actually worked really well. It got rid of those really obvious straight lines that I'd created when I was rubbing off the graphic. And as I was blending it in, it just kind of gave it more of a grubby feel. So this was a win. I didn't think I was going to be able to make it work, but in the end, after a little bit of patience and a little bit of just elbow grease, it was coming together really nicely. Once I blended in all of that instant coffee mess, I was really happy with it, but I think it needed a few embellishments at the top and the bottom. I had these pieces of wood hanging around for a long time, and I'm just going to add them to the top and the bottom. I thought it needed a little bit of black chalk paint, so I painted them up, and then I'm going to just put a little bit of glue on the back of them and nail them onto the sign. I think this turned out pretty spooktacular for a scrap piece of wood that was destined for the dump. I was able to transform it with a few graphics and some embellishments that I had in my stash. What do you think? So find some scrap wood and give this technique a try, and just get creative and try some different techniques to create some chippy, spooky looking finishes. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.